let me ask you that question because you have more experience with this than I do. When you're engaging with somebody and you're trying to have a productive engagement with them, and if not even necessarily move them, but move the people who follow them via that engagement, where do you when do you get to the point where you say this person is not worth engaging with and I need to peel off and like do this with somebody else because this is not a productive type of discourse that I'm having? Like, how do you navigate that personally?
Oh, very good question. Like that's one of the best questions I've been asked, and I can't even think how long. And so I really appreciate that, Mark, seriously, because I love answering questions, and so it frustrates me that people don't want to know stuff. Like it's like you can ask, I have answers, and so I'm going to answer that one. The way that I decide is if the person, and there's exceptions to this, but here's the general rule. If the person will not answer a question that I'm asking 3 times, so that's 3 different questions. If those questions are all meant to get at the same idea. So if they're avoiding an idea, right, by not answering questions or deflecting constantly from the point, even when I'm drawing their attention back to the point, then they don't want to talk about it, right? That's what people do when they don't want to talk about something. And so I'll let them go, right? Like, you know, I want people to understand that for the way that I look at it, I'm not trying to change people's minds. I'm really not. Like, what I want people to be able to make a choice for themselves under color of knowledge. Okay? So I want them to have the knowledge of race and racism, of how it truly exists and the consequences of it as they actually exist. And then they can decide for themselves what they want to do, right? And how they want to think. But I don't think that most people have Exhibit A to get to that point. So that's part of the goal. But yeah, if they're avoiding it, if they're avoiding gaining knowledge on the subject matter, then to me, as a teacher, as somebody who's been teaching for a long time, like even though teachers are supposedly motivators, right? People who like motivate kids to learn, you can't really motivate someone to learn. Like it's not like a real thing. People motivate themselves to learn, and you can spark someone to have an internal motivation. Like that's a thing that can happen, but like it's much more rare than people think, and ultimately it's a lot more about interpersonal relations, how smoothly knowledge is transferred. And so anyway, I guess all of that to say that if someone's avoiding an idea that's pertinent to the conversation on race, or that would lead to, you know, us having a critical conversation on it in order to deflect, in order to talk about something that is not as related or to push a certain narrative, then yeah, I would stop there. Another thing is if they're coming into conflict with the reality of race and they refuse to accept that reality. I mean, sometimes there's times where, you know, with their own words, you can prove, you know, like that they're thinking incorrectly about the subject matter. If that proof comes out and they're not able to accept, you know, then move on. You know, like you have to be able to accept when you're wrong, you know, and that's one reason why I'm always on Twitter getting on Wilfred Riley, because he has proven during our conversation that I'll be releasing at some point on my YouTube channel in clips, but he's proven that he can't do that. And what's the point of having a conversation when someone can't do that, you know? Like, he's doing math here, doing all kinds of funky math. Finally, I call him out on one of his most egregious mathematical errors. This guy calls himself a quant on Twitter, so, you know, I had to call him out. He fixes the error instantly. So he knew that he made a mistake. It was a big mistake. And he fixed it. His answer in fixing it showed that it was a big mistake. And he just still used it as evidence of his claim, which is,
Yeah.
which is just, to me, I mean, that's a video display right there of someone not being in good faith, right? Like, I don't know how else to take that, and people would say, oh, you can't read people's minds, you can't read people's intentions. That is like direct evidence of bad intentions. I don't know what else you want, like what else do you think happened there? He didn't try to amend his point. His numbers became crazy inflated after he fixed the mistake instantly, mind you, once I called it out. So he knew he made a mistake, but he was just going to let it ride, right? And so like, I feel like people feel like that stuff you can't rely on to glean truth in terms of like what people are thinking or what their intentions are. And I think that really holds a lot of people back from understanding when to engage with people and when not to engage with people. So for me, I've kind of sharpened that perception, and I just look for those moments where people are deflecting or when people will conflict with reality and not make an adjustment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think intellectual dishonesty for sure is a good signifier that it's not worth your time anymore.
Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support, and see you next time.